What is up, St. Louis and surrounding folks? If you're listening in, welcome back to the Modern Agency Podcast. We are going to be talking about a variety of different things today, starting out with some development landscape, what we have got going on as far as Millennium Hotel goes. Pretty cool development over there. And so, I mean, revitalizing that iconic site, you know.
Yeah, so this is it's Cordish Construction, which is the same company that did Ballpark Village.
Mm-hmm.
Or what was that? Almost 10 years ago now, but they did a fantastic job. Obviously, Ballpark Village has transformed the landscape of downtown, brought a bunch of life back. There's nightlife down there again. It's connected to baseball games, but it's also a place to when the Cardinals aren't playing even. You've got PBR, a bunch of other bars down there. It's kind of a place where young people come back to now, whereas St. Louis's downtown wasn't previously that way. So Cordish is the same company that developed Ballpark Village, and now they're bringing the Millennium Hotel. It's going to be a $669 million project. So huge investment.
Couple bucks.
Going to be 30 stories of apartments, 10 stories of office space, 28,000 feet of retail, 8,000 feet of food hall. There's going to be a garden involved in this, and it's going to be right across the street from, obviously, the Arch, which the Arch grounds were also redone recently. So overall, I think we're seeing kind of investment in downtown St. Louis, in the infrastructure, in the attractions that are available. And I love to see it for downtown St. Louis.
That's something that we need.
Yeah, absolutely.
St. Louis was a city that was recognized in huge ways in the past. I mean, the World's Fair, right? It's so central to the rest of the United States. It should be more of a meeting ground. And we've got this kind of weird reputation that's not really necessarily true to the rest of the United States, due to, population size and different things that factor into statistics.
Right.
Of the day.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, you look at St. Louis's downtown throughout history, and at one point it was the epicenter of the region, the epicenter of the city. It was the gateway to the West. Now you look at it compared to other mid-sized cities in the Midwest, and for a long time we were really lacking in competition when it came to downtown, when it came to attractions. Obviously, we've got all these other great things spread throughout St. Louis, like the zoo, Forest Park, all these free attractions, museums that draw visitors into St. Louis. But we've, maybe for the past 20, 30 years, had a real lack of downtown presence. You look at these other cities like Grand Rapids, for instance, in Michigan, which is smaller than St. Louis, but it's a mid-sized Midwest city. Their downtown is great. I think St. Louis is now, through all this investment, stepping back into that space to compete with those cities, to where they have the Arch, Ballpark Village now, and then, projects like Millennium Hotel site are just furthering that proof that companies are choosing to invest in downtown St. Louis again, are hopefully going to take that bad reputation that downtown St. Louis has had and kind of flip it on its head and make it a space that's a gathering spot for the region.
Mm-hmm.
Really exciting.
Super exciting. I mean, if you look at the development of St. Louis City from a residential standpoint as well, look at all the new construction properties that are coming up, and they're selling at a price that makes it worthwhile for developers to be doing them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, $500,000-$600,000 new construction in places like Dogtown, for instance, which I love Dogtown. It's super centrally located right next to Forest Park. Mm-hmm. But 10 or 15 years ago, if you would have said there's a $600,000 house for sale in Dogtown, somebody looked at you like you were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're seeing new construction like that hit the market all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So super exciting news as well.
Yeah, I mean, our team sells just as much, as not more, than any other team as far as new construction in St. Louis City goes. We've got 7 currently getting built.
Wow.
Throughout St. Louis City at the moment, working with different developers. We're developing personally one of them. I've got clients that are developing on a variety of different ones in Dogtown, Forest Park East. There's just tons of potential, not to mention all the rehab potential as well. And folks don't realize that the city wants you to come into this development, and that's why you get different incentives as far as tax credits go. I mean, so you look at it from an investor standpoint, right? Okay, well, these numbers make sense without these tax credits even at this point. And so it really is an opportunity for folks who don't even live in St. Louis to come and help develop this area, because the returns are really there. And so when I say tax credits, NPA, National Preservation Association, when you are doing a ground up new construction project, you're going to get 15% of that back. All right. in a tax credit once the project is entirely done and it's sold. Okay. And so say you spent $400,000 to develop a property or $500,000 to develop a property. Well, 15% of that comes back to you. Say it sells for $600,000. Well, there's your profit,
Yeah. So tell me about that. You said tax credit. Is that, do you have to have income to offset with that tax credit, or are you getting, as the investor, a check from NPA when you finish your deal?
So there's a couple different ways you can work it. Okay, you can use it 100% of it to offset taxes. Okay, or you can sell it to somebody else to offset their taxes. All right, as a voucher.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
as a voucher. And so a lot of times what we'll do is we'll sell you at 91 cents on the dollar.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's a credit, not a deduction. So that's dollar for dollar. You have $17,000 credit from NPA. That saves you $17,000 in tax liability end of the year. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And if you have a big tax liability, you can take that, hold on to it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You'll, experience that benefit when it comes to tax season. You don't pay taxes, or you can sell it at a reduced price to other people who want to reduce their tax liability. You can pocket the cash and they can get the benefit.
So they essentially made 9%.
Okay. Yeah.
On their money right there.
That's
right?
clever.
And so it's super valuable and just an additional bonus at the end of the day when you're looking at doing new construction projects. Now, only thing that kind of gives me a little bit of question marks around what are we looking at from a tariff perspective at the moment, and how could
when
that,
it comes to new construction, that's one thing to talk about, right?
I mean, and increase costs in construction material.
Right.
So we've got a 25% levy on Canadian and Mexican imports at the moment, 20% on Chinese goods. And so from a standpoint of where is this material coming from, and is the cost of that material going to go up? Well, yes, it is going to go up. And so that means construction costs are going to get more expensive. And so as far as construction costs getting more expensive, that ultimately means that property value is going to continue increasing on top of that. Because if it costs more money to rehab a house, if it costs more money to build a house, who is that actually going to fall back on?
Right. The cost has to get passed on to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So then the question is there enough demand in the market for that cost to be passed on to the end buyer who's purchasing the house? Or is the market going to dictate that the builder absorb the cost, or that the importer of the good absorb the cost?
Mm-hmm.
I think that'll probably change over time, right, with supply and demand. If there's a lot of demand for new construction houses, then the builder has excess interest in the properties. They can raise the price and pass more of that cost along to the end buyer. If there's less demand for new construction, but costs are still going up, then ultimately the builder has to absorb that increase in supply costs. So do you think there is enough buyer demand right now in the market in St. Louis for builders to pass those costs along, or do you think the profit margins are going to get squeezed here?
There's absolutely enough demand for those prices to get passed along. As far as, from a standpoint of supply and demand, business economics 101, if there's not enough of anything, then the price is going to go up. So, I mean, if you had the last Skittles pack in the world and you put it up on the open market and you got a guy who absolutely loves Skittles,
Marshawn Lynch is going to pay you $1 million.
He's going to pay you a lot of money for those Skittles, right? And so it comes back to that, that business economics, right? 101. And if there's not enough of something, it's going to go up in value. And so we're in a $4.5 million deficit, meaning that we need 4.5 million homes built right now to be at, the landmark of where we're supposed to be
at baseline.
With housing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep, at baseline. And so from that statistic alone, you can tell who that number is going to get passed on to, who that price is going to increase. And it's not necessarily going to fall back on the builder. It may for a little bit fall back on the builder in some scenarios, but if you're investing into a desirable location where multiple people want to be, and you're producing a very desirable product for people, then at that point the prices are going to just go up.
So buyers should expect costs to increase over the coming year, 2 years if they're purchasing new construction, and to some extent if they're purchasing existing properties as well, because obviously those costs even out throughout the market. But is that an accurate expectation for buyers?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been saying it for years at this point. When interest rates shot up and into 21, what were we saying? Well, property value may go down in areas that it was just ridiculously inflated in, and then level itself out and then continue going up again because of our housing inventory issue. Now, talking about St. Louis in general, where our median sale price and median income, well, they go hand in hand. Throughout a lot of the rest of the United States, the median income and median sale price do not go hand in hand. And so for an example, right, median income in the United States is about 86,000. Median income in St. Louis is about 83. Median sale price in St. Louis is about 280. Median sale price in the United States is over 400.
So in simple terms, if you live in St. Louis, you make $83,000. The purchasing power of that, in terms of the house that it can acquire you, is much stronger compared to.
It actually exceeds the median sale price.
Right.
Rest of the United States, not so much. Now I mean other Midwest, states, other areas where median sale price is similar, but when you get the combination of those places on the coast and whatnot that inflate that so heavily,
it skews the statistic pretty heavily.
It definitely does skew the statistic pretty heavily, but it shows how affordable St. Louis is and why it's the number one area for first-time home buyers at the moment.
Right.
And the things that we were just talking about before, right? The development that's happening here, meaning that property value is continuing to go up because of the infrastructure coming up around St. Louis. We are going to see a very consistent appreciation value here, and much, much more desirable than a lot of other places that aren't getting things like the Millennium Hotel, which has been an eyesore for St. Louis for so long, developed into something that's going to be beautiful, right? And so it's really exciting to be in this market, ultimately.
So we're going to move on to a different segment now, talk a little bit about what happened over the past week. What's a win that happened for you and your clients this last week, Sam?
Got a handful of closings on Friday, had a closing earlier this week. Transactions are going really smoothly in general. Setting expectations, that is going to always be a huge portion of this job, and then exceeding those expectations. So we've been able to exceed those expectations every time, As far as Friday, I've got a seller client of mine closing that I'm just thrilled with the price that we got on that property. I told him, hey man, if we can sell this for over $300,000, I'm going to be pumped. Sold it for over $300,000. And so that's exciting for him and for me as well, because I was really gunning for that. Another scenario, we've got a buyer closing that was an FHA client. FHA buyers, so you've got a few different types of financing, right? You've got your conventional financing. That's going to be a stronger form of financing where you can truly waive things like appraisal, right? You can truly waive that financing contingency, which goes hand in hand with that appraisal contingency, right? Because if property doesn't appraise, if the bank does not think the property is worth the amount of money that the buyer is paying for it, and it doesn't appraise, but you still have a financing contingency in the contract, you can still get out of that contract because your financing plans have changed. Okay.
Or you can make up an appraisal gap if the client.
You can make up that appraisal gap. Yeah. Which you can do that FHA as well, but you still have an FHA loan provision rider that has to be attached to every contract. Exactly. Okay. And so there's still appraisal verbiage inside of that FHA loan provision rider. And so we were able to get this FHA client's offer accepted against cash offers, conventional offers, stronger financing types in general, right? And so that's an exciting win for this family in particular, because they're getting a very desirable home in a very desirable location, because we were able to negotiate on the front end of that offer to get the offer accepted by that seller.
Exactly. And this one's a bit of a unique situation beyond just that it was FHA and we beat out, and we worked this together. We shared a mutual client on this. We didn't just beat out cash offers. We didn't just beat out conventional offers, but it was being listed by a relocation company. If you know anything about a relocation company, they want smooth transactions. They're not like a typical listing agent who maybe wants to work with an individual more so. They're looking at that contract. They want the best terms. They don't want a headache. At the end of the day, they're probably going to be much more biased towards a conventional or a cash offer. The other thing they're looking at is the amount of time to close. So we wrote a 16-day contract on this. So a 16-day contract on an FHA loan, and we got the cleared to close back this morning. So 13 days cleared to close on an FHA, beat out conventionals, beat out cashes, and super pumped for this client, particularly because she's got young kids. They've been living in a space that's not big enough for them yet. They've been going to a school district that they don't particularly enjoy. They're getting more space. They're going to have the mom who's elderly be able to move in with them and live in the home with them, with the grandkids, and they're going to be in a school district where the kids can get the education that they deserve. So all around big win.
So many exciting things around that. And I mean, really highlights as well as why you need to work with people who are experienced in this space. A lot of the reasons why we got that offer accepted is because they looked at my past history.
Right.
You know, they looked at my past history, they looked at the amount of properties that we are able to serve our clients and help them sell, help them buy, and our track record there. You know, well, they know if they go under contract with us, it's going to close.
Right.
Right.
And beyond that, they look at the pre-approval, right? They see that it comes from, and not to toot my own horn, but they see it comes from Del Mar Mortgage, which is a St. Louis-based company. And they say, okay, this is an FHA loan, but it's not, and it's not an FHA loan from Rocket Mortgage. You know, we trust that this is a local bank that's going to perform, you know, in the way that they said they've been able to perform. They look at you, they look at your track record, and it makes them more maybe willing to accept an offer that they wouldn't otherwise accept.
Absolutely. I mean, working with local banks is something that a lot of home buyers may overlook when they get a little bit more desirable of an interest rate from like a credit union or something. The thing is, you take the little bit more of a desirable interest rate from a credit union, you bring it over to Del Mar, and they may end up matching it for you. But at the end of the day, you're not even going to get close to the kind of service working with a credit union or one of those bigger banks that have their underwriters all over the rest of the United States. They're not actually boots on the ground working here, working with the loan officer to, you know, make sure that there's no hiccups in that financing process.
Right, exactly. So I can say we got this contract in. We knew we had 14 days to get it cleared to close. I sat down in the office with my processor in the same building as my underwriter. We loaded the file, got all the docs. From day one, we knew exactly what we needed. We stressed to the client the importance of getting everything together as quickly as possible. And it's just a cohesive operational standpoint that you receive when you work with the local bank that might not be available other places, that allows you to do things like write an offer with a 16-day closing period.
And working with a really good bank is so important. You don't want to get to a few days before closing when somebody might have made a mistake in your pre-approval or something along those lines, and you're a few days before closing, the bank just sends you an email. They don't even give you a phone call. They don't give you really any real explanation. Hey, sorry, this isn't going to close. Right. You know, I mean, I've seen that happen before. And I'm not going to name names of banks right now, but I've got a few that are on my naughty list. You know, but it's one of those things where it can be overlooked just because of they think it's more convenient to maybe go with the bank that they, you know, bank through, right? Like a U.S. bank or a larger bank that they've been with for a long time. And they're like, well, I'm just going to get my home loan through them as well because I
they do my checking account well, they do my savings account well. Why wouldn't I get my home loan?
Well, they don't do home loans well. Okay, they probably don't. You know, and so. Don't shoot yourself in the foot thinking you know everything, right? Because if you don't sell tons of houses, if you're not experienced hundreds of different scenarios inside of the space, I would take the advice that you're getting from somebody who has, ultimately. And I think that goes for anything, right? Do you go to the doctor just to decide what you're going to do by yourself? No, you don't, right? And so it's one of those things where it can be overlooked really easily, and it's another one of those items that you really want to be diligent on.
Well, I'll let you say it. I'm a biased opinion because I'm a loan officer at a local lender. But
I mean, I've always worked with local lenders. You know, for the past many years, I've only worked with local lenders, and so yeah, it's something that I am passionate about and could go on a while talking about because I've seen it blow up transactions, and it's important. So.
Yeah, you had something on creative finance that you wanted to share, something that you learned this week, or an experience that you're dealing with this week related to creative finance. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so when it comes to creative financing, there's a whole world of opportunities and different ways that you can maneuver that. Now, if a seller owns a property and they have had it on the market for a really long time, they've been trying to sell this for a long time, and they're not having any luck, and they really want that number that they've had it listed for, okay, well, we can put together a note, right? So a loan, essentially, that seller is giving to the buyer that you make payments to them monthly, just like you would the bank. And at the end of, say, 10 years, they actually net that number they're looking to make. All right. Because obviously, if it hasn't sold for that amount of time, it's probably not worth that amount of money. Now, am I going to end up giving that much or more to the bank? Yes, I will. When you look at how it's going to be amortized and the amount of interest I'm going to pay over that time frame, it's really could be a win-win for both parties. And there's so many different things you can do inside a creative finance space that really get overlooked from a more traditional brokerage route. But it can be a fun game, especially on larger commercial deals, larger multifamily properties and projects. But something that you should definitely keep in mind when looking at these properties that have been in the market for a little bit longer.
What kind of investor or buyer benefits from creative finance? Is this your run-of-the-mill investors purchasing 2 or 3 rental properties, or is this a pretty advanced strategy that's really maybe reserved for real estate professionals?
So I don't know if I'd say real estate professionals, investors, right? If you could call an investor a real estate professional, but an experienced investor. And so for me personally, there are properties, larger multifamily investment properties that I'm looking to purchase.
Okay.
And so we're structuring those around, my deals. And I mean, I'm an experienced real estate professional, and so it's something that's kind of just fun for me to do. Now, there's tons of different opportunity out there if you're talking with somebody who knows what they're doing, right? But don't just assume that you're going to, know what you're doing, walking right into it, right? And making sure that you're also putting together an offer that's not going to shoot you in the foot later on. And so when it comes to being creative, it's exactly what we say it is, right? It's creative. You could be creative in so many different ways to make a win-win offer, and just knowing that that's an option as far as an investor goes. Now, if you're a typical run-of-the-mill, want to have a couple 4 families, maybe a 2-family, this is actually still potentially an option for you with those properties. Now, it's one of those scenarios where it would be unique. Okay, typically 4 families, 2 families in St. Louis City in areas where we're going to see a desirable appreciation rate are going to sell really quickly. And so it's not going to be a scenario where a seller is going to say, oh yeah, well, I'll take that amount of money that I want, but I'm going to end up with that net in 10 years. Right. So don't be unrealistic in that place either, because you're getting a good deal still, right? If you buy the property for what it's worth and getting a loan today.
So creative finance or seller finance works best on properties that may be sitting on the market. And so the seller is more motivated to do what it takes to get an offer accepted, even if that means they don't get all their money now. Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is 4 families, those are pretty hot commodity in St. Louis City typically. The seller doesn't have enough incentive to want to work out an abnormal deal when they could just go on the market and get all their money today. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So, there's a variety of different benefits on top of that for the seller as well. Tax benefits.
Okay.
Right? Because they're not taking that, say they get $1 million for their property. Okay. And then they got to pay taxes on that full $1 million all at once. Okay.
So they can spread the capital gain out over time.
Mm-hmm. Now, if there's interest on that, all right, then the seller earns the interest portion of that as well. Okay. So say if you structure a note, put a 4% interest rate on it, right? Well, the seller is making profit as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Now there's tons of, I could go into a ton of different benefits on how it can be so mutual, right? But ultimately that would be like a 45-minute.
Right. I just segued into the thing I wanted to talk about. That's funny. So I closed a deal at the end of last week where the client had been pre-approved previously with a different bank. And he couldn't get to the number that he wanted to be at. He wanted to purchase at X number and bank got him to Y number.
Mm-hmm.
I said, let me take another look at it. We'll see what we can do for you. The unique situation about this particular individual was that they had quite a bit of student loans. They were in the medical field, made a great income, but had been through medical school, so they had the associated debt with that. Those student loans were still in deferment, which means that the credit report reported a $0 monthly payment on the balance. However, you've still got 60, 70, 80, whatever it is, thousands of dollars of student loans, right? We need to account for that in a monthly payment perspective to include it in the debt to income ratio. There are different guidelines that exist for an FHA underwriting of student loans in deferment versus conventional underwriting of student loans that are in deferment. On a conventional mortgage, you take the amount of the student loan that's owed and you multiply it by 0.01%, and you factor that into the borrower's debt to income ratio as the monthly payment associated with that student loan. For FHA underwriting guidelines, you can take 0.005%, so 0.5% of that total balance as the monthly payment. Mm-hmm. So deferred student loans on an FHA mortgage count for half as much in the debt-to-income ratio perspective as they do in a conventional mortgage. For whatever reason, this hadn't been explained to him before, so we walked through that. We decided that in order to get to the price that he wanted to be at, it was worth going FHA rather than conventional. We got him to X number, and he was purchasing an off-market property, so the seller didn't care that it was FHA. It's all the same to them. They knew the person that they were buying it from. And we went FHA. We got him to the number that he wanted to be at, and that one closed, and he was able to learn a little bit about the different guidelines throughout the process. It was a unique experience for me where I got to kind of educate him on what his options and availability were. And, knowing the guidelines in that specific situation allowed us to get him into the property that he wanted to be in. So that was a cool win from last week when I had closed last Friday. So
Yeah. Getting people good deals,
doing what I can.
Serving your clients, better than the rest.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so that's exciting. That's awesome. A big win. So great week. Excited for the future of St. Louis, and thank you guys for tuning in.